Everybody, hey, this is the film Schmucks. You got myself, the Cray Train, Jefe Blanca himself. We got Mr. Matty Pooh himself, Matt. And then we got the Rainmaker, the Sprainmaker, the Splooge Man himself, Sterling. Now, today is a beautiful, beautiful day, and I don't know where they live, but I know where I live, and it was beautiful. And we're gonna watch
Ah,
another movie with a very,
what?
very beautiful setting, a
Oh,
very beautiful town,
like that segue.
and a lot of fake people. Because in Hollywood, where Sterling lives, a lot of fake people. And in this movie, there was a lot of fake people. And we watched the Truman Show, a true movie ahead of its time. And I want someone, I don't care who it is, I'm not even going to call you out. When you jump in, tell me what you thought and what you think this movie means to the landscape of life itself today.
Holy, what an intro.
Poetry. Go ahead.
Uh,
Go
uh,
ahead.
okay, sure. This is the third time I've seen this movie, I think, in my lifetime, not recently. I watched it once, I think, probably in high school. Watched it again maybe 5 years ago, something like that. This movie has gotten better every time I've seen it. I'll just go out straight. I'm not no suspense here. I'll just tell you straight off. I think this movie is people probably overuse the term underrated nowadays. It's not that people don't know about the Truman Show, but I would say that as far as Jim Carrey movies, especially in the 90s, early 2000s, Truman Show usually just gets an honorable mention. But to me, it's not only a good Jim Carrey movie, and he has a good performance in it. It's a great film, and I think what caught me off guard the first time I watched this was I assumed it was going to be a very slapsticky, Dumb and Dumber kind of movie. It's really not. I mean, it's hard to even say that it's a comedy. It's more like a, I don't know. It's kind of a surreal kind of, it's comedy. It's got comedy elements, obviously, and the whole thing is kind of satirical, so it works in that way. But yeah, I think for me, I was just surprised going. To me, this is going to sound like I'm overpraising this movie, but I think in the same way that, and people do this, but the same way that we reference Matrix all the time whenever we're talking about AI and simulations and stuff, we always go, it's like the Matrix. It's like the Matrix. You hear that in conversations all the time. Truman Show is up there with a movie that just really took a philosophical concept and made it into a very digestible film with its own story. Because it is just an idea, which is a classic idea of like, well, what if everyone's in on it? You know, you're the only person who's like conscious, if you really want to go far back, to like Descartes kind of stuff. But it's like, I'm getting too lofty here, but I'll just say this. It's a good movie. It's a cool concept, and I think it's executed really well. And I think the satire angle and having someone like Jim Carrey who can have the serious moments but also do the comedy, that was the perfect angle to try to execute this idea. I think if you tried to take it too seriously, it wouldn't work. And if you tried to go full comedy, it wouldn't work. So it kind of was perfect. I thought the casting was great. That's all I got.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I I saw this movie a long time ago when I was a kid, and definitely I forgot a lot about kind of the philosophical subtext. I forgot about the fact that the studio was built like on top of the Hollywood mountain or whatever. Like that
Yeah,
really surprised me. I was like, man, this is a lot more kind of science fiction than I remembered.
right. I forgot
Um,
about that.
yeah, and it's just kind of an interesting concept. And Trey kind of said it best. It is kind of ahead of its time because I felt watching this movie that nothing felt dated. Like we've talked about some classic movies, earlier in the film schmucks history, and kind of the common thing that when we talk about classic films, it feels dated. That's
Hmm.
usually a common thing that we've said. And so it's kind of a nice surprise that this movie, it's from 1995, it doesn't really feel that dated at all. And so that kind of impressed me. Um, and the performance of Jim Carrey is just fantastic. And I think it really, really carries the movie a lot. There's some difficult scenes in this movie, surprisingly, that gives you all the emotions. And we'll go more into it later, but there's one scene in particular that made me feel all kinds of conflict, and that's really impressive in a movie like this. And so definitely, I forgot a lot about just the more insightful kind of messages in this movie, and I actually think it's definitely a more profound movie than I remembered. So I definitely think it's really really impressive what they did here.
Yeah, I mean, you guys said it pretty well. I mean, I've seen this movie 4 or 5 times, and the first time, like Matt, very very surprised at what was presented to me from a Jim Carrey movie, because I saw it about 10 years ago, I'd say, but kind of knowing him as The Mask and The Grinch, and this came out like a year before The Grinch and Dumb and Dumber, stuff like that. And so his acting's very, very good. I wouldn't say it's like amazing, but it's Jim Carrey. He adds flair to it throughout the movie, like he does in every movie. Like Liar Liar, the bathroom scene, stuff like that. And this movie, like you mentioned and I mentioned, that it's way ahead of its time. And there's so many philosophical things you could talk about. Like, would this work today? How could it work? Like, we've all had that. Like, what if everybody's in on me? Like, we always all had that thought, and kind of, like, ooh, what's that person thinking? What'd I say? And his acting was perfect in that. In the first part where the radio, he hears the stuff on the radio and the people on the road. Like, there's so many instances in this movie that his acting kind of comes out as true acting, because he's a really good actor. He's not just that crazy over the top actor. And
Yeah.
anyway, let's get into details, because I'm just gonna keep on rambling. I'm like a boulder on a mountain right now. In general, that's how I am.
I want to say this. I don't know how
Yeah.
you guys feel. Unfortunately, Truman Show was a thing because the concept was so interesting. From a very young age, when I heard about the movie, I already knew what the concept of the movie was. But this would be a movie that I wish I could get that Men in Black stick and never. I wish I could watch it and not know what it was about, because this would be a great movie to just be like, what am I watching? I could imagine it just being like a great experience, being like not knowing what's going on. Because just from a young age, I remember hearing about this movie, the concept of it, just so long ago. But it would be really cool to just, I mean, the opening and all of that is, I guess the opening you'd be a little confused because it's almost like you're watching a documentary. And then as soon as that light falls down and hits the ground, and I actually thought that was some of the best acting in a weird way, was the way it was actually funny, but the way he like looks down at it, like, what the hell? Like, what is this? And it's like the light from the whole giant studio thing. Very cool.
Yeah, and the radio, there's always an explanation for anything that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Thank God nobody died.
Yeah.
It was an aircraft or whatever.
Satellite, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Maybe it's a nitpick, maybe it's not. But I have to say, the incompetence of this whole project, the amount of mess ups that they do, like, I don't know. To me, it was like, oh my gosh, like, how could they be like so incompetent? Like, obviously if you did a project like that, it would be hard to keep that lie going for as long as they did. But just from a viewer's perspective, it was kind of like frustrating sometimes when, especially when he goes into the elevator and the break room is clearly open in the view, and it's like, what are you doing?
Sterling,
you got a TV show to run.
Sterling, are you really gonna get us into these little nitpick debates this early on? Fine, roll up the sleeves here.
Hey.
I'll say it, my friend. They do seem to make it clear that other than the girl in college, Truman has, especially as an adult, Truman just follows his routine. Now, you're right. It's billions of dollars or whatever running this place. They should have everywhere within a block of him at least should be like fully taken care of. But I do get that they just get used to the routine. It's their daily thing. These people walk there.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden he changed up his thing. I'm going to run into this building really quick. It's like, oh shit. But I see what you're saying. I think it's weird because there's parts of it, like you say, that are where it's like, how come this wasn't a more well-oiled machine? And then there's other parts where I'm like, I actually think it'd be easier than the movie made it seem to make someone. Because if you think about this, if it was me or you, and we just woke up, hey, someone wants to fly you to this place, you know, and they put you under, and you wake up from the airplane and it's all fake, you know, then you would notice things easier. But if you were a child growing up in this place, you just wouldn't have any it'd be so easy to brainwash a kid, you know, into like you could actually change the logic. You wouldn't have to explain anything in the way the world actually works. You could literally teach this kid things that don't make sense but make sense in this world. You know what I mean? And that's where it's like they actually didn't show it something like that in the movie. So it's a little bit of both. It's interesting.
No, I mean, that's the perfect defense, honestly. And I didn't fully commit to the nitpick. I just was saying that it was frustrating.
Get on them.
Yeah, where's nostalgia? Where's the comment about me being whitewashing?
Word, Sterling. You're the one that brought a nitpick. You know, so.
Hey, but all I'm saying is, he should have been like a lot more suspicious when the isolated rain started coming down and it started following him like it was a shower.
Yeah,
like it was a shower
that's
head.
true. That's true. Yeah, which is so iconic to me. Actually, the imagery there of him running out of the rain and then just going like laughing, like maniacally almost, and then it just fully rains.
Yeah,
but like Matt said though, he's been in the same routine. He's lived this life for 30 years or whatever. So something out of the ordinary isn't going to really spook him because he's had this same routine just like the people on the set. So I like how it was gradual. I like how it built up to it until instead of him like, what in the world? And then the radio call like saying how he's turning on the road, which is even a bigger one to me. Like the calling out everything he was doing.
Yeah.
And but I like how it was a gradual build. And like you could see his facial expressions and everything. All it's the actors once he started acting weird, like Matt said again, like when he changed his routine, he ran into the building. Everybody started acting a little differently. The dad showed up. He was the homeless guy.
I guess that was the catalyst, right? The thing fell from this guy, but it was him seeing his dad that really made him start questioning things.
I would have also questioned the two older twins that come up to him and ask him about the insurance policy. Do they do that every time, I guess?
Yeah,
every day.
I found something interesting. Christy brought this up. I've seen this movie 3 times. She's always, I try to get her on the episode.
Advertising.
She said, exactly. I didn't notice it until this time that I watched it, that every time they do that, there's a clear advertisement in the background. And there was a lot of little details that made me realize, like, this movie is so detailed in minor ways all over the place. And here's another thing I never really thought about that much the first couple times I watched this movie. Virtually all of the movie, other than shots outside, but anytime we're seeing Truman, it literally is shot as if we are seeing it on hidden cameras everywhere. I mean, there's a couple of more cinematic shots here and there, but most of those shots are outside of it. And I was like, when you watch it enough, you're like, it's pretty crazy that a movie, because, you know, that could be very gimmicky and get old really fast. But it wasn't until this third time in the movie that I paid more attention to that. And I'm like, it's crazy that they were able to do that without it looking, you know, like cheap or gimmicky. Or something. It worked really well. I got to give props to that.
It was part of the story.
Yeah.
Well, the first time we meet him, you know, good afternoon, good evening, good night. The neighbor with the Dalmatian. I laugh every time. I out loud because I'm an idiot, but that's not the point. When he lifts up the trash can, and he has the big black thing on there, the camera on the trash can.
I never noticed that.
What?
No, there's a camera on the trash can.
Are you kidding me right now?
Wait, you mean it shows the first person perspective?
The old guy, the neighbor with the Dalmatian.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying that Jim Carrey lifted up a trash can. There's a camera right
Oh
behind.
no,
Okay.
just the neighbor, and he does it a couple times in the movie, and I just laugh because it's like
Yeah.
so like why is there a black dot on the trash? Like I just
There
think it's so funny.
I
Yeah.
think I mean, if you guys want to get to where the rubber hits the road here, really where the movie got interesting for me every time I've seen this movie is when he starts realizing that shit's going on. And then the wife, which by the way, whenever the wife does like one of the moments it made me laugh out loud this time, Christy laughed out loud, is when he's like all distressed and then she goes, "How about some cocoa, blah 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 blah." And he just Jim Carrey's response, he's like, "What are you talking about?" It's so funny
Yeah.
to me. He's like so
Yeah.
distressed, but when he starts going crazy and he traps her in the car and stuff, like
It's a great.
there's actually a certain suspense. I can't explain it, and you guys can make fun of me here. But when he gets the knife to her and she goes, "I can't keep doing this," or whatever, and it's like this big break, and you're kind of you're like secondhand experiencing his realizations of like what she just said. It almost gives me like a chill. Like it's almost like this movie in some ways plays like. And then when he traps her in the car and he's like, "Oh, look at that, the traffic." Like he actually seems insane, and it actually is a little bit scary. Like his performance is scary a little bit because you don't actually know what he's going to do because you have a guy going mad, you know? So that whole sequence of him turning on the wife and then him taking her in the car and driving. I mean, that's like one of my favorite things because to me, that's when the movie goes from like, "Oh, this is a quirky, funny idea," to just being like, "Oh, I'm actually like, now I'm like really invested in what's going on here."
Yeah.
Well, if you want to do some nitpicking, I guess Sterling wanted to do this. Let's go for it.
Here we go.
It's not a nitpick for me, but maybe for you guys. When he does that, when she brings out the utensils that she advertised earlier in the movie, after they got back from him doing the car scene, and he's like, "You're the one." It was great acting. I love the scene. I love both scenes. He's like, "You're the one that's acting crazy." Like he kind of turns it on her and grabs her, obviously. And when she's doing all that, like she's freaking out. So my point is, we were talking about earlier how there's a routine and there's all this for these actors. I mean, obviously that day like, he did something weird, but she's been with him for what 10 years or whatever. Like the way to me, like it was a little over the top. Like her freaking out. Like even though he was doing something out of the ordinary, driving her going crazy. But hey, wouldn't the God above, God Almighty, the speaker above, like say, hey, let's go with the flow. Wouldn't he calm her down? If he has the answer to everything, wouldn't he been there the whole time? Which they don't show.
Yeah.
Which is not something I just thought of. They don't show him like them bring him in, like, hey, he's doing this right now. What is going on? Like you don't see his reaction to that.
Yeah.
You just see him come in later, which is kind of weird. But you would think that if this like Sterling was saying earlier, like there's some mishaps, they're professionals. They've been doing this for a while. Why wouldn't they be able to calm her down enough to just, send the best friend over, which they did? But what do you guys think about that? Like, do you think she was a little over the top? Like, I guess it's for the movie, but I thought because she's been with him for 10 years, like she should still, and the guy talking to everybody in their ear should have calmed her down.
Well, what really made it over the top was her saying, "This is so unprofessional."
Oh, I love that. That was so great.
Yeah. No, it was a good kind of crack in the armor type of scene where the cracks were beginning to show and things are falling apart. But I was gonna say real quick that like Matt, you were talking about that scene with the knife, and how that there was a lot of tension in that scene and kind of scary. Like there's several scenes like that I would describe as effed up psychologically.
Yeah.
Especially the scene between Truman and his dad when they reunite. That scene was so conflicting for me because I was invested in Truman's journey throughout the whole movie and I felt bad for him. And it is a good moment between him and his dad, but you're seeing the reactions of people watching it, which should be a private moment, and it just feels so wrong at the same time. And but like
Yeah.
again, it's those two feelings kind of clashing, feeling good for him, but then also like, oh gosh, this is so orchestrated, and this is not genuine from the outside sense. It is genuine to Truman,
Yeah.
and that was kind of the message of
Yeah. What do you
of the
think,
movie
Matt? What do you
was
think
that
about
he was the
those
only
two
real part
thoughts?
of it.
Well, first, going back to what Trey said, I know that's why he laughed, was because I actually think that, and it'll lead back to you, Sterling, but I do think
Yeah.
that, to me, I think the stuff with the wife, I do think it's a little over the top. I actually think the main flaw with the logic of this world. Now, I can forgive that in this movie, they're not going for necessarily a very logic-based science fiction. They're not like really writing it out in a way. Part of it is more like thought experiment. So I can
Following him.
so I can forgive a lot of the stuff, but definitely one of the biggest things that doesn't add up a lot is the wife and that relationship. And the reason why is because everyday normal interaction, especially with the outside world and coworkers and stuff, is one thing. And I know that they play it like he's very detached from the relationship with his wife, but it's got to be more nuanced than the way they show it in the movie, where she's just playing a part. And it's like, and I guess does she sleep while he's at work or something? Like, I don't know.
That's her break. That's her break time.
Yeah, it's like that's her break as well. He's at work, I guess. And it's like, okay, but other than that, they're going to be spending most of the hours, 16 hours a day or whatever, together for like at least 10 years. We know that they met in college. So it's like what you were saying, Trey. It's like, it is a little over the top. The way she acts is as if this is like, she doesn't really know the guy at all. It's like, but she still knows who Truman is, and they should have some kind of relationship. It's obviously fake on some level, but it's just bizarre to me that they would be living together. Christy brought up a good point. She goes, "Is the wife basically a prostitute? She's getting paid to be in this relationship. It's orchestrated." And I mean, they're ambiguous about it in the movie, but they're clearly trying to encourage him to have a child. And it seems like he's not interested. So that makes it seem like we know for sure that him and the wife have had sex. And then it's like, okay, so they're paying this woman to have sex with him.
Maybe he doesn't know what sex is.
No, the
talk about the
big guy
baby,
upstairs
though.
wanted them to conceive. So
I get that. I get that.
and what made me think is, this is what I love, is them cutting to people watching the show.
Yeah.
I love that in this movie.
It's great.
And one of them going to the two guys in the parking garage, like, oh, they just cut it off and the music, white
that was
music
the
and
funniest
stuff.
thing.
You don't see nothing.
That was those
But I
guys were
love
so
those
funny.
scenes.
Yeah.
I love.
think,
My favorite's the guy in the bathtub, because he has
yeah.
the big
Right.
celebration at the end, and it's hilarious. You guys know what I'm talking about?
No, I know exactly what you're
Oh,
talking
he
about.
He's a
froze.
raisin.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love all those, like, I love that, and it wasn't so abrupt. Like, we talk about editing a lot in these shows, and I thought the editing was really good. And like I said, I love those cuts to the customers. And they've been watching it for 30 years in the start. Like, I just love the interaction with, I guess, fans. I love it. I love that part.
I would love to see the productivity rates from the workforce in this world, because I think the amount of work, or the lack thereof, is probably pretty scarce in that world. I mean,
That guy's always in his tub. They're always watching shows at the parking garage. The grandma's the bar. What are they doing at the bar? That's all they do is watch the show.
The shelves at Walmart are empty all the time.
Yeah.
It's at sports bars. It's that show. I love that. That's good. That's a good pickup.
You know, I gotta say, there's one interesting thing in this movie to me is I can't help but think of other ways this could have gone, which is, One, and it makes me think you could easily have like a horror version of this where the guy actually goes psycho and has like a mental break and actually starts killing people. And I think
Yeah.
that could actually be really
Like Brightburn.
interesting, because if you have the guy, the man upstairs, as you said, Trey, if you have him who wants the show to go on, it could be this interesting power play between this like guy who basically owns this small area wanting the show to go on, and then a character like Truman killing people. And then it's like, hey, everyone else is like, whoa, we got to stop this. It's like, no, you need to play the part. You just got to stop him from doing it,
Matt, you took the words out of my mouth. I was just thinking that too when I was earlier. You were talking. I would love to see a remake,
Yeah.
like with modern technology, because cameras are way smaller. Like they were ahead of their time with technology. Kind of, they just had small cameras. Like, like it could make it bigger. I would love to see an updated version of this movie. I would be really interested to see what concepts, because the concepts are different than in the real world than what they put into the movie than they are today. So they could have so many different ways they could make this movie and have it could be like a guessing game. Who are the actors who like a show? It could be even a show, like a show about it's something. Like, there's 3 people. Who are the actors and who that would be kind of cool. Like make it interactive with the actual people. Us idiots that watch it. Like,
I'm kind of curious. Do you guys ever think maybe in the future there'd be a show sort of like this? Maybe not to the same extent, but do you think maybe reality television could take this concept?
I'll real quick. I think with reboots, how crazy they are, I think someone will take this idea in 10, 15, 20 years easily.
Yeah. Probably with the rate it's going now, I could imagine them announcing some kind of reboot to this in the next 2 years or something. You know what I mean? I think if they
don't get me hard now.
Well, here's what I think though. If they do a
excited.
Truman Show type thing, it needs to not have actually anything to do with the Truman Show. I think they just need to do, if they do something, they just take the concept and do something new. Because it'd be, if they try to do a name thing where they're just throwing Truman Show name up there as like a reboot, that would be annoying. But so much to talk about in this movie. I noticed so many details, like one of the things I noticed this time was they have the original score for the show, which is great. They have the guy playing piano, but anytime it shows him listening to the radio or anything like that, it's always classical music. And I realized that that was really clever. It's because they can't have copyrighted music.
Oh, I see.
And the TV shows that it was mentioning him watching were all, I mean, I don't know that they're public domain, but they're all really old TV shows. I Love Lucy and stuff. So it's funny. There's like something to be said there about it, about like, I don't know. The music thing was interesting. I caught that this time. I was like, oh, I think it's like they wouldn't be able to just play pop songs because it would have to be copyright. So that was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This might be a nitpick for Sterling, maybe even Matt. It's something to talk about. How bad can the security be for this place? If the girl he loves and is making a picture of can just break in anytime she wants, and go to a dance party, connect eyes with them, go to the library, like. How bad's the security? I guess if you're like the break room in the elevator, I guess, but it's a huge dome.
This is we're gonna enter. Everyone, if you want to get off the ride, get off now, because we are entering nitpick city here. Because this opens the door to me to all the little nitpicks of this movie. I want to say the reason why these are nitpicks is they do not hinge on how good. This is a great movie. I think you should watch it. These are little things that are fun to think about. They're not necessarily flaws with the movie. They're just interesting. But that girl, the thing that for a moment in the college, so it starts off when the kid is in utero or whatever. He's like a little, fetus or whatever. It's not clear that they built this place yet. They obviously, as they got more money, they built it later. So for a while, and then they kind of show when he's a kid, it seemed like sometime around probably 7, 8 is when they started to build the place, because he tries to go on the other side of the beach and the dad's like, don't go over there, and you hear construction. But college it was very confusing to me because I'm like, okay, I'm assuming at this point that this is the Dome. We're at college age. Everyone's actors. But then the girl who he talks to, he likes, I'm assuming, okay, she's an actor too at first, right? But then she doesn't have the heart to do it, so she ends up telling him this stuff, right? That's what it seems like. But the whole sequence where he's making pretty eyes at her, and you could tell that the people upstairs are like, no, we already have a love interest for you. And it shows like the Men in Black taking her out of the ballroom or whatever. The scene in the library when he's talking to her, I can't talk to you right now. They'll get me or whatever. I'm like, why? I just was confused about how the world worked. Is she still an actor there? And they just have her character in the library? And then why wouldn't the friends or someone be like, hey, we got to go, Truman? It was like because the cameras were all watching him have this conversation with the girl. They usually have interceptions, right? Like, hey, we're going to stop this or whatever. It was so weird to me that like I just didn't understand. It was a little unclear. It's like, is she still an actor? Why wouldn't they have just like fired her or put her away from him? Like, I just didn't get
Well, I think she was fired. And I think she was just breaking back on the set. That's why I was trying to be funny. Like, how bad's the security?
Okay.
Like, she kept on breaking back onto the set to go tell him the secrets. And another nitpick is the scene with her dad.
Yeah.
So give thoughts about what he said. We can get into that after. I don't want to interrupt the
Yeah,
flow.
I mean, go. Okay. Well, anyway, I was just going to say that just kind of feeds into what I said earlier, that, like, to me, there was so many incompetent, like, things that happen in this movie that obviously progresses the story. It doesn't really detract you that often, but it just got kind of frustrating because it's like, my gosh, this is the greatest show on television. The best producers, the best everything is invested in the show, and they're fucking everything up. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, that's my biggest gripe. And it's not even that much of a gripe. So that's all I gotta say.
You got to admit.
So, yeah, what do you think, Matt?
You guys got to admit the little compilation it showed of the multiple times that people tried to tell him it was a TV show, like when the guy popped out of the present. That was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, that
was really good. The guy parachutes down into the dome and all of that.
They had technology to make small cameras, but they didn't have good identification systems back then, I guess. So that's probably not a very good border in that whole country or whatever. Didn't they say they had a budget the size of a small country or something? Like they're essentially treated like their own thing, which is crazy.
I did one of my favorite things in the movie is I do like the concept of, like, they say that they are the first company to ever legally adopt a child or whatever. But you have to stretch your imagination a bit there and go, now, obviously, in the movie, they make it a thing where there's clearly people, there's a whole campaign of, like, free Truman and stuff. Like, there are people who think it's wrong, including the girl. But you do have to, like, suspend your disbelief a little bit to think that in America it would ever get to the point where a company could just, like, exploit a child like this so openly. I do think that there's things similar to that are believable that, you know, business and Hollywood would do.
Well,
but actually the idea of legally adopting a kid and everyone knows because it's a TV thing, that does seem like a little bit of a stretch that could happen. But we're in a sci-fi world, so, you know.
Well, hey, I'll just say this. I don't think it would go that far, but corporations, you know, don't give them a mile. They'll take 10,000 miles. I'll just say that.
Ooh-wee.
So
they'll steal a penny off a dead man's eye. So
I don't. Yes,
cut that out. Cut that whole segment. Actually,
get that shit out. You talking to the man upstairs? What are you doing?
I mean,
who do you think I talked to? Christoph.
That guy was so arrogant. We talk about him, like, the arrogance. Like, I mean, I guess that show would never work now, like the last 15, 20 years. So, I mean, it's a product of its time. Like, I guess in the 80s, 90s, this maybe would have worked. But just seeing the scenes we have with him, he's a great villain. That actor, he's from The Rock with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery. And great movie. and that would be one we should do.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
But well, there we go. So, great villain. But man, like you know who he is and what he's about when you first see him. He gets interviewed, I think. Wasn't it the interview?
Yeah.
His interview.
And he's real pretentious. Yeah.
Yeah, so pretentious and especially the last scene, which is great. Like you talk about, I still haven't forgiven Mr. Sterling Reigns for the Unforgiven, but it might be a while. But you want to talk about a great man, a great dialogue at near the end of the movie, like him talking to him, like for the most part, just him. And I think just that whole conversation, one side conversation, was acted really well. And yeah, I think that I'm talking about. What if you guys have any thoughts? So I think it was a great, conversation or whatever for a movie.
I'll say I think it's great. I actually think that Christoph, you get him what he's about too, and he's obviously like this pretentious artist, but he is like this artist. He's creating this thing, and even like up to the final scene, it takes so much for him to even just turn the thing on and just talk, because he just doesn't want to break this illusion, even though it's so obvious that Truman's.
He's willing to kill him.
Yeah, he's willing to kill him. Yeah. And there's that line that is great, and this is one of those things, exactly what you were saying, just great writing and stuff, is when he says, when Paul Giamatti, shout out, says, you'll kill him or whatever, and he's like, he's like, you're gonna watch him die on TV, and he goes, they watched him be born or whatever. Like, you could see to him, he had gotten it's almost like Christoph got to the point where he believed that this was a fake, this world was real. And that to him, he was so caught up in the story, the dad coming back and all this stuff. He's such an artist in that sense that he basically forgot this is a real human at some point, because he was so willing to just go like, well, he'll die. And that's actually a good ending, because that brings the story to this ultimate close, And it was, I thought that was great. And I think him fighting and almost drowning in the waves and stuff, that's one of those scenes where it's like, if you go into this, you're expecting this slapstick comedy, and then you watch that scene, it's great.
Yeah, I agree. I think he definitely, along with Jim Carrey at the end, just kind of, it wrapped up so nicely. And I think it ended probably the best way it could have, although part of me wished I would have seen at least one scene with Truman and the girl.
Interesting.
Because I was invested in that kind of potential relationship. And of course, I was invested in Truman, and I wanted something good to happen. That was actually real.
It was enough for me seeing her run down the hallway.
The run down the hallway was good. I'm going to take it.
Go ahead.
I'm going to take it a step further. You guys both will disagree with me. Whenever Truman, by the way, it's the initial thumbnail it's the initial GIF that our pal Trey sent us in the Film Schmucks official chat that let us know what movie we were watching, was simply Truman taking the bow. When he, it's so funny because it's just a silly line, but when he says, and there's that long pause after Christoph has that whole thing, and he just goes, in case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, good night. I gotta be honest, something about that was so powerful, it gives you chills a little bit. Whenever I see that part of the movie, it's emotional. It's emotional, and it's and you're like, damn. And him fighting through the waves, which it was genius, by the way they made him afraid of water. We have to talk about that. That was a great idea. But I have to say, I think that he walks through the door. I would be totally okay with the movie just ending right there. I think if they added one additional scene after it, it would have been the girl running down the hall, because that was great. But I'm not complaining, because I do think everyone cheering, it adds a little bit to the emotion of it, and you're cheering for him too. But as far as just personally, I'm I think if I could have it perfectly the way, it would almost be perfect if that's the end of the show. He walks out and that's the end. But I love it either way, so it's a great ending.
I'll add this with that scene. I think the acting when he hits the wall and he realizes
Yeah.
it's a wall.
Oh man.
The emotion, the slow mo. You don't think that it's slow motion would be good in this movie, or whatever, but the slow motion of him hitting
Yeah.
it as hard, like he's hit. Jim is hitting that wall hard. That
You
has to
could
hurt his
tell.
elbow.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
Like that was emotional. Like him finally realizing, like I made it. Like I wasn't crazy. Like thinking that something was going on,
yeah.
stuff like that, and. That was one of the more emotional points for me in the movie too.
You're getting me jazzed up right now. I'm getting all like, oof,
I'm
getting all
gonna
jittery
watch it again. I
thinking
wanted to
about
watch
it.
it again today.
Wow, yeah,
I'm
that's
gonna watch it again soon.
so great. And,
Yeah, it was all right. It was all right. It was all right.
Cut
Yeah,
it.
you suck.
Get him out.
Yeah, cut that son of a.
Nostalgia. Trash him
Sterling.
in the comments.
You
what?
got something to say?
We need to
Say
get-
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We gotta go on,
no,
man.
it was good.
All right,
Go
1 second to Sterling. You don't want to add anything, or you don't really agree? You're gonna partially agree. Like, it wasn't that emotional. It was kind of emotional.
No,
I think
Like-
he's just joking.
no, I actually think, yeah, I was just joking because the only thing I have to add to that scene when he's banging on the wall is it was a good decision to not hear any sound except the music because it made it more emotional. So that's
And-
all I gotta say.
Speaking of music, and we can probably start feeding this into final thoughts, guys. I just realized that we've been every time I think it's a movie where we're not going to have a ton to say about it, we always still end up going almost an hour. But I'll say this, the music, the parts that were like an original score, I really liked. You know, as there's a part, there's a certain theme that plays, especially when he's starting to try to like, the first day when he starts going like, he doesn't get the newspaper at the stand, he goes into the other building, all of that stuff. There's like this kind of anthem-y type like music playing that like builds up, and it's really great. And I think the music is actually really good in the movie overall. Like all the times he's trying to escape, it ends up sounding, there's this very specific theme that plays throughout that I really like. But
Just one more scene that kind of stood out to me. The scene between him and Marlon, his best friend, when Marlon is trying to convince him that, whatever he's thinking about, like, the Sea Haven is real. You know what I mean? Like, he's trying to convince him that he's not. He's kind of crazy, I guess. And you hear the director giving him the lines. And the emotion in his face is really well done, and it's really messed up in a way because he's saying, I would never lie to you.
yeah,
and you can tell the guy himself is like, it's so painful to him. And
yeah.
so it was kind of cringy. It was cringy in a good way.
And I have to say, maybe this is me thinking too much into that scene, but there's a part of that where the guy says a phrase, and I can't remember for sure if Truman mouths it when he says it, or he just kind of finishes the sentence sort of with him. I can't even remember what he says, but it's almost like, oh, this is this guy's tagline. And clearly that night is the night that he disappears the next day, right? So like, maybe, I think it was then. So that's when I wonder if the moment when Jim Carrey hears the phrase again, because he finishes the sentence, there's a part where you can almost see the disposition almost change, where I wonder if that's the indication of the moment when Jim caught it. He's like, oh, he's saying this thing that he said so many times that I know it. And I wonder if
Jim, he reacted to it.
Yeah.
I don't remember what he said.
I wish I could remember
I'm definitely
too.
going to watch this.
Yeah,
this
I want to watch it
I'm gonna
back
watch
now. But there's a lot of little things, little details in this movie. It's a good rewatch. It really is.
Yeah.
Well, that line he says too was, but you're telling us is true, that it's all fake. That means I'm fake too, and I wouldn't lie to you, or whatever he says.
Yeah.
Like he gets so emotional, like Sterling saying so much, like that Christoph, that mother trucker upstairs. He's like you said, an artist, man.
Yeah.
Fuck that guy.
He's like Rumpelstiltskin getting that yarn into gold, like gosh darn.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
he was an interesting character. I gotta say, Paul Giamatti, who is Oscar nominated actor, I think, but anyway, I think he was the Oscar nominated for Sideways. But anyway, the moment when Kristoff is losing his cool and he's like, turn it up, turn the waves up. And there's actually a great, I mean, for the little bit of screen time that he has, Paul Giamatti, when he's like, it'll kill him or whatever. And he kind of has this emotional moment. It was really good acting. And I was like, that Paul Giamatti, he really pulls through on Truman Show, even for that 2 lines.
Hey, man.
He's
Big
good.
fat liar. He's a world-class actor. Come on.
Yeah, that was the Oscar nom. Now I remember.
Yeah. He's
Frank, go ahead.
our boy's Mr. Sterling's best friend. One of his movies, The Negotiator, was Samuel L. Jackson and his main man from Target, downtown LA, the spaceman himself.
Yes. Yes.
Negotiator.
The Spacester.
Paul Giamatti is a hostage in that movie, and he has some quivering voice. And,
Okay.
I've never seen it. The
have you seen
Negotiator.
The Negotiator?
No, I've never seen it. Never even heard of it.
Jackson, come on, baby. Kevin Spacey, Oscar nominated. Cut it.
He's a great actor.
So-
Cut it, but he's a great actor. Okay?
Yeah,
Let's say it.
yeah.
I'm just going to say it. You can cut it, you can bleep it, you can cancel me. But Kevin Spacey is a good actor, all right?
That's not even controversial. That's just facts. So, but
hey, his friend himself, Sterling, he brings it out. He brings the truth out.
he just doesn't know I'm his friend. It's a one-way relationship.
we just hooked eyes.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to look into his eyes too long. You know what I mean?
We
got to cut that, Matt. We got to cut that. We can't get demonetized again. Okay, even though we get demonetized every time.
I know.
Anyway, Matt's like, yeah, this is gonna be a crap show.
Okay.
Add an extra week for editing on this one, boys. This is going to be a rough one.
One final thing before my final thoughts. I think part of the reason why the director, Kristoff, was such a good villain is for a moment, there was that scene where he goes up to the screen while Truman is sleeping, and he touches the screen.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: it is creepy, but it's like for a moment I thought, wait, does he actually kind of care about Truman?
For sure.
Does he actually does he care about his humanity whatsoever? But again, then him deciding to almost kill him, that completely flipped it on its head. That was such an interesting swerve. That kind of it was just, I don't know.
It was the next day. All right, things changed.
Yeah, you got to sacrifice for the other.
10,899 days on air. All right.
God, that's a long time. Oh.
I love it when when they don't know what to do because it's the first time ever he's not on camera, and they're like, "Just cut it," and it goes to the thing, it cuts it to the thing, and everyone's just like, "What the fuck?" Like as if the world just ended. That was pretty.
Yes.
Awesome.
We've never had higher ratings just with this one screen.
Yeah.
That's what he said. That was funny.
Right. Man.
Okay. Well, that's all I got. If you guys got anything else, shoot for it.
No. Well,
I always think of something the next day. So
yeah. I think of it the next 15 minutes. Sometimes I think about it while you guys are doing your outros. I'm like, crap, I should have said that.
Hey, we can wait 15 minutes and just do nothing.
It'll be the highest ratings Schmucks has ever had.
Yes.
I just put that screen up. But
that'd be great.
All right. You want to wrap it up and wrap it down? And
I'll go first since I went last. That's okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, overall thoughts. This is a really good movie. It really impressed me how much it wasn't dated, and I think really anybody under any age could watch this. It's a pretty, it is kind of has dark undertones, but I think there's some really cool messages within kind of the subtext, and I really think that you could actually learn a lot from this movie. And just like Matt said earlier, it's really good, has good rewatchability because there's so many little details and little kind of hints and foreshadowing and all that. And so, yeah, I think the direction was really good. The performances, especially by Christoph and Jim Carrey, Truman himself, are very, very good. And yeah, I would say definitely give this a watch. And that's all I got to say.
I think I gotta agree with Sterling. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, that's a
I do have
first.
one. Yes. Yeah, I think that this movie is, like you said, I think it's one of those movies I think that is just it's to me. There's a lot of like top 100 movies and lists, and I feel like Truman's probably not on a lot of those. I think it's one of those movies that everyone should kind of watch because I think it just illustrates a really interesting concept in a really great way, and I think that it's just a hope. The movie is very hopeful by the end, and it really it's surprisingly emotional. It's funny. It's one of those movies that has a little bit of everything in a really good way because I mean it touches on all these great points, and I think you actually see Jim Carrey in a great way because I think it's one of the first times. When this was around that or in the 2000s when he started doing more serious stuff. He always has good acting in his comedy movies, but to me this is one of those movies where it's like he plays the part straight for most of the movie. So he's actually, the comedy parts come in here and there. And so you actually get to see the best of Jim Carrey, which is him being goofy and funny, and you get to see his great acting abilities. And I think Trey said it best, that scene when he's pounding on the wall is so emotional. It's just great acting. I say everyone should watch this movie. It's worth a watch at least, and it's optimistic, and it left me feeling good. So,
Yeah, I mean, one of the first few movies that we all agree, and I would say this is one of my favorite movies. Like maybe not top 10, but like especially because of the rewatchability, the concepts, the ideas behind it, and what it means today. I don't know if we really got into that, but
yeah.
I mean what it could mean today. But yeah, Jim Carrey showing his chops early on in his career because it was in the late 90s and showing what he's really made of. And yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to go. I really want to watch this again because I've seen it about 5 or 6 times. I think you said, and I wanted to watch it again because I watched it last week, and I want to watch it tonight, but didn't have time. But Matt brought up some stuff that I missed, and I had to go back and watch it, and it's worth watching the whole thing. That's what's so good about this movie, and the pacing is really, really well done. Editing is really well done. I mean, there's not much. We had some. I mean, I guess we call them nitpicks. I mean, a few, but nothing that will subtract any points with what you thought of the movie, and it's well worth the watch for anybody. I would definitely recommend it to anybody because, yeah, it's one of the better made films, especially of its time, and like Sterling said, it's aged well. Like you watch it and there's nothing really like, oh, that doesn't look right, or whatever you want to think about it. So yeah, it was a great film, and I would love to see a new version, not the Truman Show, but a new version, updated version. Yeah, I put a twist on it, like you said, kind of like what they did with Superman with Brightburn, like stuff like that. I would love to see something like that in the future. So good on Matt for saying that. But
The Trayman Show.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, the film Schmucks. Thanks, Sterling. All right, thanks for.
Hey,
Trey, close us out.
commentary, Trey. Wait, Trey gets to open it and close it.
Yeah,
Wait, let's switch
close
it up.
All right.
Wait, let's switch it up.
Okay.
Trey, Trey, you
All right.
or Sterling, you try closing it. See if you can do it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to Nostalgia's real commenting because he hasn't commented the last couple of videos. So you need to get back on that, okay? Because I really miss you, and you're one of the few commenters on our videos. So it helps the algorithm, all right? So what also
Algorithm's
helps the algorithm is liking.
You just missed the guy. Come on
Anyway,
now.
I know. My love is real for nostalgia is real, so that's all I got to say. Anyway, comment, like, and subscribe this video. It helps us out, and just continue to watch us, and just come back for some more Film Schmucks next week. Off the Rails edition.
Cut it.
Got it.